Hi everybody, my name is Mallory. Welcome to my vlog. Today I'm going to be discussing the topic of social networking sites and how some of the usage patterns, along with the thoughts and feelings associated with it, are very similar to that of a substance addiction. The article that I selected for this vlog is entitled Social Networking Sites and Addictions 10 Lessons Learned. It was written by Kuss and Griffiths, and it was published in 2017 in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. The underlying thesis to their article is the idea that the perceived need to be online can result in compulsive use of social networking sites. And in these extreme cases, they can result in symptoms and consequences that are traditionally associated with substance-related addiction. So it's definitely a newer topic, but with the ever-growing presence of social networking sites, it's just going to become more prevalent. This vlog today, I'm going to take you through why I selected this article. I'm going to talk about some of the main ideas the authors discussed. I'm going to offer my own critiques. And lastly, I'm going to connect it to some of the topics and concepts that we discussed in our course. And with that, I'm going to jump right in. So I selected this article because I aspire to work with youth. And while this idea is already very important, I imagine it's just going to become more prevalent. In some of the work that I do already, where I go into schools and I interact with youth, I've seen this deep connection that they have with social networking and with their cell phones in general. It is not uncommon to see a grade 2 student with a cell phone or to see a young person scrolling on Instagram. These are just common practice and it's just become a normalcy to them. What I've also observed, though, is this anxiety related to not being able to see a notification right away or not being able to check your phone every couple minutes. These are real threats that face young people as they become more and more dependent on these technologies. And then, of course, just to be candid, I also selected this article due to my own personal experience in terms of sometimes being over-reliant on social networking sites and on my phone, and just hoping to shed more light on it and become more aware overall. So the authors discuss 10 main lessons that they've discovered in their research, but for the interest of time, I'm going to discuss the top 6 that I found most relevant to our course. Number 1 is the idea of social networking versus social media use. The authors really wanted to distinguish that when they're talking about this potential for addiction, they're referring to an addiction to social networking sites specifically. These refer to virtual communities. It's the platforms where individuals can create these online profiles and choose to portray exactly who they'd like to the world. This is different than social media, which refers to this producing, sharing of and collaborating of content online in a variety of different formats. So when we're talking about this addiction, we're specifically talking about social networking sites. Some examples are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Number 3 is also a very important lesson. The idea that social networking is a way of being. The authors put this beautifully in that it refers to not only what we do, but who we are. And this is very relevant to young people, as social networking is simply a part of their culture. They've never really known a world without it. They were born into its, presence and its popularity, and this can be very dangerous, especially when we talk about addiction. Trying to explain to young people that the amount of time they're spending on these sites can be problematic is a very daunting task when they see it as a part of everyday normal life. Lesson number 4 is also very important. The idea that individuals become addicted to various social media sites, but often because of 2 main rewards. The first one being self-efficacy and the second being satisfaction. However, these 2 rewards often come in exchange for more negative consequences. And these negative consequences typically involve neglecting of offline relationships, as well as issues in a professional context later in life. So definitely this time spent on social networking is having an impact on social skills. This is very interesting because it relates to our definition of addiction that we've discussed in class, where there's this exchange for short-term pleasure or pain relief in expense for these adverse effects that are consequences, but the individuals may not see it that way at this time. Number 6 is also an important lesson, and that is FOMO. It's part of the social networking site addiction. FOMO, FOMO, for those of you that don't know, stands for fear of missing out. And the authors define this as the pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one is absent. And what's really interesting is that they've determined that this is more prevalent in individuals with a preoccupied style of attachment, something that we've discussed in several of our other courses. People with preoccupied attachment styles are very concerned for how they're perceived by others. And it stands to reason why they would be seeking these sites to compare themselves to other people. Number 7 is also an important lesson that smartphone addiction is a part of the social networking site addiction. What the authors wanted to clarify here is that it's not that individuals are becoming addicted to their smartphones, but rather they're becoming addicted to what the smartphone represents. And this is that it's a pathway to social networking sites. The authors go so far as to state that arguably youth are no more addicted to their cell phones than alcoholics are to their bottles. And the last lesson is number 8, nomophobia. And this refers to the fear of not having one's phone with them. What's really interesting is that some of the feelings associated with this fear are very similar to that of the symptoms of psychological dependence. In fact, we see the 3 out of the 4 C's of addiction here, whereas there's a craving, so there's this want to continuously use these sites. There's a loss in the control of the amount or the frequency of use, where people just get lost in how much time they've spent. They look up and they don't even realize they've been on there for that long. And then, of course, this compulsion to continuously use. So definitely, really, it relates to the way we interpret addiction. Now, it was difficult to come up with some critiques. I really did enjoy the article. It was very interesting. I did highlight a statement, though, where they were referring to youth, and they said that they tend to be described as individuals who are alone together, whereas they're always connected via technology, but in fact isolated. And I just had to question, what are they defining here as this connection? Because of course we have to acknowledge and validate that there are quality relationships that are being built on social media platforms. And of course, in this debate about social networking sites, we have to consider that it is being used for many positive things, and it's widely accepted in today's world, especially in the professional world, where it's very common to be looked at over various social media platforms through your LinkedIn profile before you even go in for an interview. So it's definitely becoming a common practice, and there are many positive characteristics associated with it, which need to be considered. Some of the topics discussed in the article that relate to our course are, yes, the overall definition of addiction, as well as that term self-efficacy, whereas people's feelings and ideas in relation to if they feel they can accomplish a goal and how those feelings actually impact if they're going to be able to accomplish something. So it's important to consider how using these sites can impact that self-efficacy piece. And then harm reduction is very present in the article. In the author's recommendations, they talk about the importance of not abandoning use, but rather ways to reduce the psychological impact associated with it, through limiting the amounts and through exercising self-awareness, using various tools. Something similar would be to use that daily diary that we use in class, where we can track where potential triggers may lie and what are the thoughts and feelings associated with using these sites. And with that, this vlog has come to an end. I would like to leave you with a little bit of homework, practicing this mindfulness. So I'm going to leave you with the question, how are you thinking and feeling when engaging with social networking sites? I'd encourage all of you to tune into these emotions. How does it impact the way that you're viewing yourself, and how long can you go without it? Thanks so much, And don't forget, subscribe to my channel.